Welcome back to the Non-League Papers, Non-League Goalmouth YouTube show. My name is Matt Badcock. I'm joined by our executive editor, John Couch, and our regular man around the country, Andy Mitchell. Andy, how are you? Thanks for joining us, mate.
Living the dream.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Not entirely convinced you are, but
Well,
well, you were living the dream on Saturday when you went to Macclesfield, and it seems the only place to start. The biggest story of the season probably so far, the biggest story of the FA Cup third round weekend, Macclesfield knocking out FA Cup holders Crystal Palace 2-1, and it was not like they were really hanging on or anything like that, really, from kind of what we were watching on the TV in the office. But what was it like, Andy, actually being there?
quite surreal, really. I think, and even in those post-match press conferences, it was very celebratory and giddy and almost manic in a way. A little sense of disbelief, really. I think it's probably sunk in sort of midway through the week, exactly what we witnessed there. I also think that an early kickoff has an impact. There was a fair bit of frost on the pitch in the areas that were kind of covered by the stands, and the sun hadn't hit it. So it had all those classic ingredients, and it was a good atmosphere. But I think if it had been a 3 o'clock kickoff, it'd have been a more boisterous atmosphere. You know, whether that's booze fueled or whatever on the terraces. Less opportunity for people to get tanked before they go in the ground. But understandably, the Palace end was quite quiet anyway. Primarily because they probably left at about 4 a.m. to get there. I mean, I'm just south of Birmingham. I left at 8 because obviously you get there early in a game like that because you're expecting it to be carnage. Palace, I'll use the word dominated, but I'm not sure I quite mean that. First 20 minutes, they had all of the ball, and Macclesfield were like, right, and they sat in a little bit. And Palace did all the right things on paper and tried to do the right things that didn't quite come off around the penalty area. But they did it at such a slow pace. And you had Paul Dawson charging around like it. And, you know, a lot's been made of that aerial challenge after 7 seconds. Well, that really did typify what he did. He was like a man possessed. He was charging around. He was pressing anyone and anything. Wherever the ball went, he went. And he really led on the front foot. And Macclesfield were almost a little bit tentative, really, in those first 20 minutes. It's understandable, and that might be the way they set up. So, you know, concede, and it becomes a very different game, doesn't it? But I think it was kind of the way he drove on. I think the players in the forward areas and in the middle of his colleagues in the middle of the park almost were like, actually, they're not coming at us that quickly. They're not coming at us in a way we can't cope with. Can we get after these? And after about half an hour, that started to happen. And it was quite basic stuff. They were just getting into them. They weren't standing off or banking in. They were like, right, we're going to go and press you. We're going to go and take that ball off you. And by that point, Palace had always become catching. Palace had become that ponderous and doing it that steadily that they were getting caught on the ball. I think it was about 2 or 3 minutes before the goal. There was a scruffy half opportunity that Josh Kay pulled wide. I think I've got his name right, Josh Kay. Yeah. And he pulled wide. And Mark Gahey is going absolutely bananas because there's just not enough pressure on the ball, and there wasn't the same control that there was in those first 20 minutes. And it's because Palace had started so slowly and Macclesfield hadn't quite got at them yet. And it was so hard for Palace to kind of come out of that. The goal goes in, pandemonium. But then after that, second half time, they make 3 changes. They bring on 3 senior pros, Brennan Johnson, which I believe is their record signing, Will Hughes and Tyreek Mitchell. All of whom, you know, you'd expect to pep them up. And they went from 3 at the back and they matched Palace up, and they matched Macclesfield up. And actually, Macclesfield were by far the better team for the next 15 minutes. Again, it was a bit scruffy. It was a bit... There weren't necessarily clear chances in there, but they were sort of ooh-ah moments. And that sort of lifted the crowd and lifted the atmosphere in the place. And Palace were all over the place until they conceded the second goal. Now, I think something changes there. You know, Palace start thinking, oh, my God, we really are in trouble now. And Macclesfield think, oh, my God, we've got something to hold on to. And that changed the territory of the game. It shifted up the other end, and all of a sudden Palace kicked into gear. So they probably created more chances across the 90, but they surrendered the control they had in the first 20 minutes. And they did absolutely nothing until Macclesfield got 2-0 up. And on that basis, it's hard to argue that Macclesfield didn't warrant their win. And just what you said there, Matt. Okay, the free kick went in the 90th minute. You got a little feeling that he was going to put that in.
It just felt like it sort of seemed quite obvious that what was about to happen. It was almost a bit like a penalty or something like that in a funny way, wasn't it? But
waving the phones around with the lights on to try and put him off. And it's like, it doesn't look like he's getting put off here. Bang, in it goes. And you think, oh, God, here we go. But it wasn't a siege. There was pressure. Don't get me wrong. It was, most of the game was played up that end of the pitch. But
it didn't seem like they were sort of like hanging on and getting lucky bounces and things where you're going, oh, they got away with that, and scrambling balls off lines and things like that at all, were they? So,
well, if Palace had scored earlier, it could have been a bit different. They had a kind of flurry of flashes across the box that nobody got on the end of, and the game would have been different. I think that it was Uche who kind of dropped deep at 0-0, and he brushed the roof of the net after about 20 minutes. And that was the point that that was about the only thing that Palace created at 0-0. But if they score first, obviously it's a different game. But no, they weren't hanging on. And to be fair, the one thing that Macclesfield did do throughout the game was deal with things in a very controlled and composed way. It wasn't really a surprise that they did that in the 6 minutes of added time, because they'd done it for the whole game. I think back to the match of the day coverage where cross comes into the box, Paul Dawson is there on the edge. The cross almost gets pulled back from the left, and he just nods it down away from the post, but just close enough for the keeper to pick it up. And then he does that with his hands. Oh, calm down, boys. And it was that calm and composed throughout the game.
I've got a question for you, Anne. Just quickly. Sorry there. I mean, we've all seen cup shocks before. We've seen sort of teams take surprise leads and that. But I was watching it, and I was always the skeptic in me was thinking, oh, here we go. Palace are going to nick it at the last minute. But at what point did you think, wow, we're onto something pretty special here? When the referee blew his whistle, probably. It certainly was for me.
Honestly, I think, and just coming back to the sort of slightly subdued nature of the 12-15 kickoff, I had that feeling from 1-0. And I know that's easy. It might be, hindsight-itis or whatever. I don't know, but it just didn't. And that, no disrespect to Mac here, that was more about what you saw from Palace than what you were seeing. It was a complacent performance from Palace. Oh, we'll move through the gears when we feel like it. We're going to control this game for the first 20 minutes, and we'll move through the gears when we fancy, and we'll see these off. They're not going to come at us, but boy, did they go at them, and that just changed everything. From the half-hour mark to the hour mark, either side of half-time, Macclesfield by far the better team, even in an attacking sense, and they were in control and not particularly worried in the whole game. And it took a pretty decent free kick to beat them. As well. They haven't surrendered that many chances to a team that's so far ahead of them. So as soon as that goal goes in, I'm looking at it thinking Palace are in trouble here, because they've spent so long in first gear that they can't get out of it. And it was more from that point of view, and the composure of Macclesfield as well. It's not that easy to be that composed in those circumstances. But there was, a different Premier League club might have had a more boisterous away end of jeering or getting after their players. But it was very quiet.
Yeah.
It was very quiet in that end. And there was also, I think there was probably what surprised me is there was an expectation. It felt like there was an expectation around the place. It felt like Macclesfield fans expected that something could happen. Sometimes you get like a lot of fans turn up and it's quite jovial, and we'll have a few jars and we'll get cuffed 4-0 and we'll have a lovely day. It didn't feel like that. It felt like there was a genuine belief there from the Macclesfield support. And I think that kind of influenced it as well. There were so many little things that made you think, hang on a minute, you could see that which way it was going, but you couldn't. You almost didn't trust yourself to believe it. And then that goal goes in and you think, this is on. This really is on.
Do you think it also kind of shows quite how far maybe the non-league game has come, in the sense that tactically, and we see this right through the pyramid now, tactically players are so much better at keeping that sort of discipline and sticking to the sort of the stereotype that I imagine a lot of fans who watch football higher up is that they'll come down and eventually, and obviously it does sort of happen. There are more, but eventually someone will kind of sort of not stick to their game plan, or the game plan won't be quite there. But obviously Matt was so set up to sort of counteract that as well, and was sort of probably changing in the game how they were dealing with things. You think that sort of shows the sort of tactical awareness that we've got at this level of the game now as well?
I don't know. I think maybe it's always been there. I think it depends on the manager and the players involved. I think it could, or the tactics themselves have changed, but the tactical awareness, whatever the tactics are of the time, some teams, players, groups, managers, whatever, are better at it than others. I know it's more technical now, and you get to see more things, but I suppose you could argue that Mac would always be in a better position on that anyway. I remember when Richard Evans was in charge of Romulus, and I used to help out there on the media side. Cool, pushing 20 years ago now. Time flies, doesn't it? And he always said to me that he made a better manager because of his limitations as a player. Better players, more high-profile players on the non-league circuit went into management at higher levels, but he was a better manager than them because he always had to think about the game. Now, those Macclesfield players and John Rooney and everybody else behind the scene on the playing side at Mac would have had to think a great deal more about this game and a great deal more about their game plan than Palace would necessarily have to. That doesn't mean they did think about it more, but they have to, and they did, and it came off. So I think it's not necessarily, the game changes all the time, but you'll always have teams that are tactically better at being tactically aware than others, won't you? And Macclesfield certainly were that day.
As openers go as well, obviously in these games where you're trying to bridge these gaps, and think of the shocks that have been in the past, it so often comes from a set piece. But that Dawson, it sort of almost seemed pre-written as well, the way the cameras on the TV sort of focused in on, I think it was Sam Heathcote kind of sort of tidying his bandage up and tucking it in because it was coming a bit loose. And then
I didn't see that live.
And then
I hadn't seen that
goal,
live.
wasn't it? Perfect non-league goal against Premier
great
League.
delivery.
Yeah,
Palace, I don't know what they were doing, but he's just, he's got his chance, he's got his header, and he's just buried it, isn't he? And it's again, you talk about setting the tone, the way he'd gone about his business. It was sort of fitting that he got the opener as well, probably.
And well, he's directed a perfect ball, hasn't he? Sometimes it's about the delivery, and I think with the whole maelstrom of stories that can emerge from this. It was actually the one we did in the preview with Tony Bugby, wasn't it? Luke Duffy, who I believe trialled at Palace, put that ball into the box, and it was the perfect ball. It was the perfect ball. So he's just sort of punched it back across. But watching that back when I got home, and of course I watched bits of it back, and he's tucking the bandage in and whatever. You can't find that, can you? It's just that's. I hadn't seen that, but it did get brought up in the press conference. So
Yeah.
And of course we ran with it, and they were such good value, those two, in the press conference. Honestly, I wish I could, kind of take you there. It's this small room that's probably usually used as an office from its setup, I think. And they come in from the tunnel through this small door, and Sam Heathcote's there. And the first thing everyone stood up because there's not a great deal of space in there. So he's sitting down at a desk, and we're all stood up, and we're huddled round because we've got to put our phones down or our devices down or whatever. And we're kind of peering over him. And he's sat there, he's like, "Ooh, this is a bit on top. I'm not used to this," or whatever.
He's a great story as well because of his, the runs in the family, the FA Cup upset. Obviously his dad Graham. Legendary Alty size and part of that Burton that famous win over Birmingham all those years ago, and as player and manager.
Well, Mac and Alty, massive rivals. It was one of those where like the conversation about the day was flowing, and there wasn't really the opportunity to kind of throw that in there. Because halfway through, obviously they'd asked for Paul Dawson as well. So Paul Dawson just comes in and gate crashes, and they almost act like a comedy double act. Paul stood behind him, Sam still sat down. They're exchanging banter, answering questions, and it flowed beautifully. And it would just kind of summed up the day, really.
They are chaos. They are sort of chaos days, aren't they, from a reporter's point of view? But it kind of ones you forget.
Well, they are, and I really want to bring this up.
I was going to say, because I know what you're going to say now, because you said this on Saturday when we were talking in the office. So
yeah. I really want to bring this up now. Far be it from me to confess this, boys. I can be a smidge grumpy sometimes.
I can't believe that. No. You've been
I'm waiting for the better half to overhear this and come through the door while we're live. But sometimes I'll say, "Oh God, do I have to go there? It's going to be absolute carnage." I'm not going to be able to enjoy it because it's going to be chaos. And non-league clubs aren't always set up to do these things. Let me tell you, from top to bottom, from stewarding, from entrances, from the food outlets that I saw, from the interaction with me, for the access we had, it was all structured. But it wasn't over the top. Oh, you can't go there. You can't. It was none of that. It was efficient, relaxed, enjoyable, organised, and whatever. If you asked for something, people wanted to help you, top to bottom. That was from media staff. That was from ambassadors. That was from stewards. And I have to say, it ran like clockwork, and it was the best from that point of view that I've ever been to. And that might seem a technical point and maybe even a selfish point from a journalist's point of view, but let me tell you, that matters to fans as well. That matters to the first-time visitors that went there that will consider going back, because when it's chaos, those people go away unhappy from what is supposed to be a happy event.
Credit to Matt, because sometimes down the years you sort of do speak to clubs, and when they've had these big games, sometimes they're like, "Oh, I actually really didn't enjoy it because it was so much. There was so much we had to do. It was really hard. It's put a real burden on all sorts of different people, and to do other things. And it is not an easy thing to kind of take on when suddenly everybody descends on you and wants answers and needs things, and it's not. I don't sort of envy non-league clubs when they do get these big days sometimes.
I have to say, it was excellent. I mean, even to the point where, after the press cut, can we hang around in this room and use it as a pseudo press room? Yeah, of course you can. Club ambassador comes in with just little touches, comes in with food and whatever. Somebody else comes through. Are you being looked after, boys? Anyone want a cup of tea? And this is a good 2 or 3 hours after the game, and when they could be on the other side of the ground having a few jars. It was brilliant, and if any club has an event like that and they're unsure and they want to learn, give Macclesfield a call. I'd recommend.
Yeah, and obviously a really emotional day as well, and a poignant day for what the club's kind of been through, and what it was really nice to see Ethan McLeod's mum and dad were in the dressing room afterwards, sharing hugs and well wishes with all the players, and they really are. We can't imagine what they're all going through as a as a family, as a club, as a group of players and management, and having lost their teammate in this this dreadful tragedy. But to have that kind of how he was so front and center of the day as well just seemed really fitting.
I put it in the report. I mean, I had a little walk around. I mean, the press were in that the sort of smaller side stand. So I had a little walk down before the game, and his banner is directly between the two dugouts. He is literally overlooking the pitch. I'd imagine side view, when goal kicks are taken, pauses in the game where teams set up, his teammates would have been able to see his image as well, which would have been inspiring too. It struck me some of the things, the manner in which John Rooney said what he said. You could just sense a real connection. You could, and a sort of burning, almost anger and frustration that John was maybe suppressing at seeing a life cut so short and seeing the potential cut short and the loss of a person that meant a great deal to him. It wasn't a token gesture, you could feel the meaning in what he was saying as he said it. And he was very present throughout the day. And you would expect that with two broadcasters there, and the broadcasters asked questions about it. I just thought the placing of the banner was really relevant. It directly overlooked the pitch. And I'd like to think that was quite deliberate. But yeah, he was there. He was front and center of everybody. Not just those interviews, because you'd expect the people doing the interviews to ask those questions. He was front and center of the conversations that you had as you walked around and spoke to people and engaged with people on the day. People at the club. They would bring him into the conversation just as you would. So it wasn't this kind of media thing, if that makes sense. It was more than that. And
you can see on like players' Instagram posts afterwards and things like that. They're still, I think I've seen Danny Ellis. I think he's got a tattoo on his with Ethan's initials and his number and things like that. So it kind of, obviously this is, as I say, we can't imagine what they're going through, what it's like, and there is this kind of, right, and everything carries on, and football keeps going, and we keep ticking off the games, and it's kind of, it is unimaginable, and but like you say, fitting that it was just that he's so prominent for everybody, and that they could kind of dedicate it to him, I guess.
Yeah, and I hopefully it's a mechanism to help everybody deal with their grief. Grief is a very personal and individual thing, but then you've got the collective grief as well. And I know a great deal has been spoke about Liverpool this season and the impact that has. You've almost, because of when it happened, you've almost got something to look ahead to and get on with while this FA Cup run keeps going. And I suppose the biggest task any club would have, and I'm sure that they're meeting it head on, is dealing with when that grief really hits, because I think we could all relate to the fact that grief can sometimes hit you in the quietest of moments, as opposed to when you're automatically keeping yourself busy, which a run in the FA Cup like this naturally will for a club at Macclesfield's level. And all you can do on a human level, irrespective of all this FA Cup stuff and all the noise around it, is to just wish everybody the very best in navigating that, because it's not a finite thing. It doesn't, we'll know from our family members. Grief doesn't end when you go to the funeral, for example. It's going to be an ongoing thing, and that there will be the downsides to that Mac have to deal with, and the people at Mac on an individual basis have to deal with. But from what I saw, I'm sure they're incredibly well geared up to do that. And I think having that person's memory front and center of everything can only help.
Yeah, they seem, from what you're sort of, what we've seen, but also what you're saying, having been there as well, how together and united they all are, and obviously sort of, sure leaning on each other. And as you say, it'll be front and center for the rest of the season and time on anyway. But also then now they've got Brentford and Couch. It's another opportunity for them to go and do it all again.
Yeah, it is. I mean, looking at the draw, I mean, end of the day, they got another Premier League team at home, but weirdly, it feels like a disappointing draw. I don't really know why. I'm disappointed I didn't get like a City. I think as the draw unfolded, Man City were in with them, and I thought, oh God, now it'd be great. That'd be brilliant. And Brentford at home. You think end of the day, this is a Premier League team. They're top six. So I mean, what a great draw. So they just got to go and do it all again. It's a very, very similar sort of similar occasion for them, as Andy says. They're well geared towards hosting it as a football club, and the players will know exactly what to expect. I don't think Brentford are going to go there and be quite as bad as Palace were, but who knows? I mean, this is Premier League footballers turning up at a non-league ground on a 3G pitch, and it's a little bit alien, isn't it? So, I mean, I didn't give Mac a chance of beating Palace, so I'm going to keep quiet on this one. But as I say, the FA Cup, we mentioned it many times, didn't we? In the build-up, it's the FA Cup. Who knows? All the cliches come out, but on Saturday, it come true. So we could do it all again.
I know what
next time.
I know what you're saying there, John. In terms of it almost feeling like no disrespect to Brentford, almost a flat draw, because it's almost like it's one that they really shouldn't win, a bit like the Palace game, but or almost. And at least there's probably a little bit of glamour with Palace being the holders, whereas you dream of that glamour tie. And the one striking thing, because obviously the question always gets asked after these games, doesn't it? Who do you want in the next round? And there were Uniteds and Liverpools and whatever, but everybody said the unanimous verdict amongst everybody was that they wanted to be away. They wanted the big day out. For everybody. So I don't know. Is it disappointing that they're at home? I don't know. I don't know. You might have Rob's personally. You might feel very, very differently. There's huge opportunities with it being at home, and I mean it'll be a very similar tie, really. You'd imagine Palace and Brentford are,
I believe
in its own way. And will it be another early kickoff? And will that be a factor again? I don't know. But you'd imagine that Brentford will be particularly well prepared because they'll have seen what's happened to a Premier League team of similar standing.
They whack that analysis on in the build up to the game and say this is what we cannot afford to do, because this is what can happen. Like I say, I think that's kind of one of the big, not a myth, probably overstating it, but sometimes we can't. Obviously broadcasters are always looking for that non-league team at home, and they'll be at home. Actually, if you talk to any players and things like that, they want to go away.
They go away. Of course.
I always talk about Josh Coulson. He's at Newmarket Town now, and he was part of Cambridge United's sort of promotion team, and they were in League Two when they played Manchester United at home, and he missed a sort of a header late on. This was in the days of replays. Headed over the bar late on, a good chance. Could have put him. Well, he's already a Cambridge United legend, but could have sort of sealed it. But he said, actually, it was great because we got to go and play at Old Trafford, so they all got the chance to go and play out there, and that's the sort of things you don't get along.
Once in a lifetime, isn't it?
Financially for the club as well.
Yeah, financially for the club.
Because with all the will in the world, those teams are not going to win it. So they need the opportunity to cash in. Okay, they've already cashed in, but to cash in even more and to set them up for the future. Particularly with Mac's ambitions, Rob Smethurst has been quite open about the fact that he wants to get them back to the EFL, and we know that navigating that path is as tough as it's ever been. That bottleneck is still there at the top of the National League. Let's not open that one up again today, boys. I probably ain't got time for that. But there's that bottleneck, and there's more and more and more money in it. And the Macclesfield that went bust, was always at the top end of non-league. Now they've got to do that much more to be even at the top end of that National League once again. So,
and for the fans as well. I mean, the fans. I mean, what a day out that is. This is the FA Cup. This is all about fans, and the chance for Macclesfield fans who probably go and watch their team at Curzon Ashton, and no disrespects to them, Buxtons, and of this world. All of a sudden, they find themselves at the Etihad or Old Trafford. Oh wow! What a day to remember for life.
I remember covering
Manchester United. That won't be. No one's going to Old Trafford this year, are they? So.
No.
But who knows? Who knows? They might go and do it all again, and then get. Who knows? I always remember saying Lincoln, their run, they took them a little while. They had Ipswich and then Brighton and then Burnley away, and then they were at Arsenal in the quarterfinals. It's just mad things happen in the FA Cup.
I remember covering Bournemouth. Just back to the player point, though. I remember covering Bournemouth when they were in the Championship, and they pulled Villa away. I won't name the player, but he was somebody who'd kind of. Championship was the highest level he played then, and the excitement of it. Even a Championship player at what was deemed a relatively small Championship club at that point, relatively young player, he's there with his phone taking pictures of Villa Park. So can you imagine what that's like for part-time footballers? The significance of getting that away draw, but they didn't get it.
They've still got a great draw. They've still got a Premier League team at home. It's going to be on the telly box again.
Whatever happens, they've won. Whatever happens,
their story's kind of already been.
A couple of million quid along the way.
Yeah, amazing story already. And we just hope that they can. Who knows? Can they? Well, they're already kind of being talked about as the greatest upset of all time, aren't they? And it is in terms of positions and all that kind of stuff, but just incredible story. Incredible story.
Well,
I'm sure you in. Go on.
Quick question, boys. Do you think, like we know it's the biggest gap, and we know it was against the holders? Can you think of any non-league ones from the past that you think actually trumps it? Is it number one?
I think I don't. I'm never. It's always like the sort of the Messi Ronaldo debate, all these sort of things. Does it have to be a number one? But I think it. To beat the holders.
Yeah.
In that, is and the gap, and I know that people are sort of a little bit. So they didn't have their sort of full first team out. It's like, but they still did have England international. Mark Gay will be playing lightly for England at the World Cup. Adam Wharton will be almost certainly at the World Cup with England. It
was 6 changes from the last Premier League team. So, and to be fair, there's a lot of Premier League teams out there that would make more changes than that against another Premier League team. 3 who started the final with 1 unused substitute from the final. And then you've got their record signing and 2 other players who played in the final in May. Came off the bench at half time.
Yeah, incredible.
I think that's a strong enough team. Personally,
I was going to find the sort of weird. I know it's sort of that weird sort of social media debate, and I need to just not pay attention to it. But when you start seeing people like saying, it's like, well, no, it clearly is. I think
there's a debate to be had, but I do think it's the best. I think it's the best because they're the holders.
Yeah,
I think it's the best because you look back at all the other ones, and they're probably far enough back. And so the more recent ones would have been full-time National League teams against full-time. They'd be full. We've got to remember Mac are part-time. We've got to remember, you look at the size of the club and you think of them as a top non-league club, and they are. But they are on their way back, and they are in National North. And they're not running away with National North.
Yeah,
there's 2
and
teams
they were at Set 3 last year.
Yeah,
exactly.
I always saw Sutton Coventry, Wrexham beating Arsenal with the old Mickey Thomas game. Hereford, Newcastle going back to the 70s. I always saw that them three being the three iconic games. But I think you're right. The fact that Palace are holders, and the first offence of the trophy, that they beat Manchester City in just a few months ago, and to fall to a team from the sixth tier. Yeah,
do you not think the gap between this level of game and the top of the game is completely different now as well?
I was just about to
say, resort everything is.
I mean, in them days there was no professional team playing in the sixth tier, so yeah, that's a good.
But in terms of money, finances, that's at that top end of the game it is a totally different game at that level. Talk about the levels in difference in levels in non-league, let alone as you're going up the football league into the Premier League and the teams in Europe.
It's a totally different game, full stop.
Yeah.
Non-league has changed markedly, but Premier. But that's because the Premier League has jetted away. So yeah, again, I think that gap that's stretched between the levels anyway. Again, as what makes it the greatest. And because I was there, I'm going to have to call it the best.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why was I there?
Yeah. What was the point in being there if you couldn't say you're at the greatest ever FA Cup upset?
But let's be clear. I think it was, and I think
I agree. I do agree. But I enjoy. I think everyone's going to have their own. How do you sort of fully define it? It's all going to be. Everyone has their own attachment to these things, aren't they? And I agree. I think it. I do think it is. That is going to be on the titles of FA Cup sort of programs in the the title package at the beginning of it for forevermore.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool thing to.
Poor old Ronnie Radford won't get his goal shown on Match of the Day.
Cut anymore. Ronnie Radford's out. Awesome big header with his bandage.
Yeah,
that's going to be on the. That's going to be on there forevermore. So until the next one, but it gives a lot of teams a lot of belief. It's great for non-league. It shows again that shows non-league in a great light to the wider football public, and that can only be a good thing as well. Couch, is this the point? But let's touch on the other two FA Cup games. Couch, is this the point that we apologise to Burton Albion for saying that because they've been 3 non-league. I think every round we've said,
I always knew Burton were going to beat Bournemouth.
Eastleigh could beat them, Brackley could beat them, Bournemouth could beat them, and they've. We're talking about this on the Football League paper podcast.
Yeah.
And, if you should like and subscribe to this channel, you would have seen that as well. That would have popped into your inbox. But I know something upset Burton Albion, or they were motivated, but they've gone and absolutely whacked Bournemouth there. Was it 5-0 in the end? And quite a performance. And they've obviously got their playing West Ham next, aren't they? So they've got their getting through some tricky non-league ties. But
Bournemouth saw off 2 League 2 teams pretty comfortably to get to that point. We all know about their record. We've spoken about it many times on here, and 4th time in the third round in the last 6 years. They had the momentum. It just looked like cup shot written all over it. But Albion went there with a very a clear game plan, and clearly just didn't read the script, and in the end it was a bit of a step too far for Bournemouth. I think that once they got a goal in front, they were chasing, and then they kind of. I mean, the stats would suggest that the game was a lot closer than it actually was, but Bournemouth Burton Albion, by all accounts, had the game by the scruff of the neck right from the word go, and you have to say that's a pretty professional performance.
Just saying about a step too far, Weston-super-Mare had this great run to the 3rd round as well. Up to Grimsby, probably a bit harsh to say a step too far, really, because they've really pushed the League 2 side all the way, really, coming back twice from going behind to get to 2-2. Towards the end, they've only sort of lost the game then. But Couchy, a great effort from Scott Rogers' side. They can take a lot of heart from that, can't they? A brilliant run for them. You can see, I think they had about sort of 500-600 fans up there who were serenading their heroes at the end, and just a fantastic effort from Scott and his side. And that's something they can take on for the rest of the season into what they hope will be a continued promotion push.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, a long old trip for them. Just to say, good back in 600 fans, and on the field they gave a real great account of themselves. I know it's another FA Cup cliche, isn't it? But no, they really did. I mean, as you say, to come back from going a goal behind twice, 2-2 going into the final quarter of an hour. We all know with no replays that basically throws the tie open. If you can get them to keep them getting the penalties, you got every chance. And they come so close, didn't they? I only saw highlights of this game, extended highlights, and from what I saw, they really did go toe to toe with Grimsby, and were very, very unlucky in the end. But Scott Rogers will take a lot of heart from that, as you say. I think he would have learned a lot about his players, and he's going into a National League South title race, which is wide open. And just to have the benefit of that experience, I think behind them will stand them in good stead. So I think a good day all around for Weston-super-Mare, even if the result didn't go their way. Certainly, there's a lot to be positive about.
Yeah, I think he might turn his phone off to stop any offers coming in for striker Louis Britton. That's not always helpful when when long-term ambitions, when a striker does so well in the FA Cup and then goes and scores.
Luke Coulson as well. What season he's having?
Yeah, it was. He's obviously been at higher levels, isn't he, and showing what he's about, and he's once again doing it at Weston. On any other sort of Saturday, the Isuzu FA Trophy and Chatham Town's win over Carlisle would have been on the front page of the NLP, I would have thought. A brilliant result for Chatham. They've obviously now going to play Southend, who beat Bath in Tuesday night's rearranged game, which is a few games off. Southport beating Eastleigh on Tuesday as well. I spoke to Neil Dans yesterday, having been down there on Saturday, 20 minutes. I think he said that we were there about 20 minutes and we were back in the coach on the way home, and then they've had to go back down on Tuesday and make that mammoth trip, and they've come away with a 2-0 win. So they've got a slightly more local trip to Fylde in the next round. But Couchy, a brilliant result for Chatham as a Step 3 side. Obviously, Walton Hersham are progressing as well. Seeing the Step 4 boys, Anstey and Clitheroe, go out on Tuesday night to Halifax and Scunthorpe. But we're getting to this. It can kind of starting to see where this sort of trophy is going. And you were at Kidderminster against Morecambe on Tuesday night, and Kiddie certainly stamped their mark all over Morecambe, winning that 6-2. Was it 5-1 at half time?
5-1 at half time, yeah. Kiddie were really good. Very, very good. 7 wins on the trot for them now. Andy Murray. Andy Murray?
You're doing the tennis podcast is later, Couchy.
Yeah, tennis paper. Yeah. Adam Murray is he's a manager of the month for a reason. He's got them playing some great stuff. And they're scoring goals for fun at the moment. And I could see them catching up Fylde and South Shields and making for a real good battle in National League North. But I wanted to chat about Morecambe. Couchy rant time. I really feel for Morecambe. I think we've given Morecambe a really, really media as a whole a really, really good run and really good press this year for what they did over the summer. The fans were absolutely fantastic, both on and off the field. They obviously had a real rocky start. I watched them on Tuesday night, and they were absolutely all over the place and trying to play out from the back, which is my massive bugbear. They got caught out time and time again, but still did it. On the field, the players were looking at each other. There was a lot of arguing going on. They didn't really know where they were, but that's not my bugbear. Every team does. Every team has that, especially on a cold Tuesday night in the cup. It happens. It was the manner of their defeat, and I'm sorry, but the manager has to take the rap for this. The manager, I was watching him the whole game. and he was in the dugout, head bowed, trawling around his technical area, did not say a word. There was no direction. There was no leadership. There was no inspiration. Halfway through the first half, they're 3-1 down. There was a player injury. All the players come over to take a drink. They were all talking amongst each other. He was still there. His coach was coming up every now and again to give the odd direction, but not a lot at all. He was still there, did not say one word to his players. And that, for me, was a massive red flag. And actually, in fairness to him, he made a double substitution at half-time. That looks a little bit better in the second half. But Kitty had taken their foot off the pedal by that point. And I couldn't stop thinking Morecambe are in a heap load of trouble at the bottom of the National League. If they are going to get out of that National League and give those poor fans something to cheer about at last, then they're going to need a lot more direction, a lot more leadership, and a lot more inspiration than that, because it was absolutely dreadful. And I know there was a fans forum last night where questions were asked. The chairman didn't turn up. I don't know why. I don't know what that was about. So how far they've got with that, I don't know. But judging on that performance, they're going to need to step up. Otherwise, there's only one way to head in, and that's down.
They're leaking an alarming amount of goals, aren't they?
Yeah. It could have been 10. It could have been 10. Honestly, they kept giving the ball away at the back. David Davis nicked the ball off the centre back 3 times. He could have had. He missed 2 sitters in the space of about 5 minutes. Eventually got his goal. At half time, it could have been 8. And as I say, second half they took the foot off the gas, and they're stroking the ball around as if it was a training ground. And Aziz's goal back for Morecambe right at the end, those 100 or so fans behind the goal barely cheered it. It was the weirdest goal I've ever seen, because it was actually a very good goal. But those fans who had made that trip down on a very cold Tuesday night and absolutely nothing to cheer, they couldn't even bring it amongst themselves to actually cheer the goal. But that's how bad they were. And something needs to be seriously done there. Otherwise, their season could be ending very, very quickly.
And of course, I remember us talking about it at the start of the season when Morecambe's takeover got signed off, and we said not necessarily the best idea to get rid of somebody of the calibre of Derek Adams.
A Derek Adams team would not lose that game. Would not capitulate in the way that they did. That first half, there was a 20-minute period in that first half where, God, it was like playing a kids' team. It was men against boys, and bear in mind, National League, Morecambe, a National League team, and a league above Kitty. You would never have known it by seeing.
Kitty are good at the moment, though, aren't they? I mean, I've seen them twice over the festive period in this run of 6 National League wins in a row they put together. In that run, they've beaten South Shields and they've beaten Fylde. I was there for the Fylde game, and I saw them beat Curzon Ashton 1-0, which was a different type of performance, because Curzon Ashton had made themselves incredibly difficult to beat, and they carried a real threat on the break. Kitty had to be a bit different, but particularly the Fylde game. I don't know what you saw on. Might have been a bit of a different game because of the opposition, John. But Kitty looked very fluid. You know, you'd have a centre half from a back 4 popping up on the right wing. You know, yes. the fluidity of the side they've got. And if we think back to earlier in the season when they lost 5-1 to Radcliffe, and Adam Murray spoke about the kind of hangover from the previous season, comments that he was criticised for. And I spoke to him recently, and he said, you know, in hindsight, I probably made a bit too much of that, particularly at the time. They now look like the unit that you would probably expect them to be under Adam. You know, he's had that time to bed in. They've also had a hell of a lot of change since then. A couple of players have gone out, but a number have come in. I was funny enough, I was talking to him about it when I was there for the Curzon game. There's a few of them are loan players. So you've got Paul Calumbai from Dagenham. You've got obviously Ashley Hemmings, who's come back in.
Yeah.
But the real cog, and I don't know if he played in the game, but Charlie Cooper, and the anchor in the middle of the park.
Yeah, well,
just makes the whole thing tick.
Yeah, that was probably the most impressive thing of it, because he had Cooper and he had Hemmings, who were both cup tied. In the Morgan Smith, who's their main man up front, he gave him a rest. So he actually played with a false nine. He played Riley Reynolds, who's a gritty little central midfield player, / number 10, playing as a false nine. I mean, I looked at the team sheet. I thought it'd be interesting to see what he's going to do here. He's got young George Walker, who's a winger, who's very, very good as well. But you're right. They're very, very brave on the ball. Harriers, the two fullbacks, Joe Foulkes and Reece Devine, they play very, very high up the pitch and act as second wingers, and the David Davis of this world just sort of tuck in, and he's their shield. Callum Bay is another one. The two of them were shielding them very well. They just look very, very well drilled, and I say brave on the ball, and play with a lot of pace and create a lot of chances. And they're looking really good at the moment.
Dangerous side.
Yeah, very dangerous. Yeah.
So Adam Murray's getting them going. We have to get Adam Murray on here.
Yeah,
he'd be a good guest. Fascinating, seriously brilliant person to interview. Always sort of has been, but such a fascinating character, and kind of so many interesting insights into the game from his sort of playing.
Interviewing Adam Murray is almost like chatting to a mate down the pub about football.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
In the sense that he will just literally talk to you how it is.
Yeah,
and it is quite refreshing. You know, we've got a few managers who are like that. You know, we're blessed in that respect, and Adam's certainly one of them. You know, I haven't interviewed him many times. I haven't come across him many times, but straight away, you know, you can ask any question.
Yeah. He's not. Yeah, he doesn't duck away from kind of anything. Yeah. Not you're sort of like getting into, but he is happy to talk. He is very open about, you know, his career, and you know, he says openly that he should have had a better playing career. He should have played in the Premier League many more times than he did. And he's talked about his sort of battles he's had with various things, and he's just a brilliantly open person who you know doesn't have to kind of be like that with people like us. You know, frankly, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but he talks to you on a level as if you kind of do. So yeah, we'll have to get him on here one day, see if we can coax him onto the YouTube channel. But we're sort of running slightly out of time. I know we've all got busy days ahead. We'll just touch quickly on it that there's been a managerial change at Boston. Graham Coughlin out there. The return of Paul Hurst obviously had success. Well, I think it was 2010-11 when they got promoted from the Northern Premier League under Paul Hurst and Rob Scott. My sort of memory slightly failing me from having looked at it yesterday, because I just know it made me feel quite old, because it was in my sort of early days at the paper. But he's gone back there. Graham Coughlin out. I sort of listened to some of the quotes from the chairman, David Newton, sounding like they weren't overly impressed with some of Graham Coughlin's interviews recently, plus the results. So that's kind of why they made a bit of a decision there. I'm sure Graham will have something to say about that at some point down the line. So a change there. And we also just want to touch on the Isuzu FA Vase that is back this weekend. We're into is it the last 32 now?
32, yeah.
On Saturday, again, a bit like the trophy, you're starting to. This is the point now where people are starting to think, "Ooh, could it be our year? Get through another game, and then you're sort of suddenly into the last 16, and it starts getting all very exciting." And I know you've seen a couple of Vase games this year. You've been up to Droylsden. You've seen them win against Northwich, didn't you? And then you saw West Didsbury in the last round up at Rossington, Maine. What have you made of your games that you've seen so far?
The Droylsden Northwich game was potty, actually. Northwich obviously a leading Step 5 team this season and appeared to have taken control of the match. Droylsden Step 6, probably expecting to be up there. this season, and have obviously, I think they've certainly been in the playoffs past 2 seasons. I don't know, certainly one final, maybe 2, in the 2 different divisions, because they had a lateral switch as well. So there's a lot of expectation that they get back to step 5, and they're not exactly running away, but they just had a grit and determination. They just got back into Northwich, got a goal back before half time, then got another goal, and it just completely went. It's almost probably a bit like the Palace game in the fact that the first goal Droylsden get changes the game, and it was a thundering comeback. And you look at Dave Pace's past at Droylsden, and what he did for them, and where they got to last time, getting up to the National League. Underestimate him at your peril, honestly. He's I know he's a Marmite character, but there's just kind of a feel-good factor about that place, in a way. And they can't be underestimated. Probably West Didsbury and Chiltern very different, more aesthetically pleasing, a top step 5 side, a really good balance to it, a balance of pace, power and finesse. It's not all nice tippy-tappy football. Latique Roberts at the back was very strong on the day, but the star man was Sean Mosscrop when they got through against Rossington-Main. Again, that deep line central midfielder that just makes absolutely everything else tick and enables people to flood forward and go and do what they do, knowing that they've got that cover there, that they're not, if they give the ball away, they're not going to be carved open necessarily. So a good balance to West Didsbury and Chiltern, and probably the best team I've seen so far. Obviously, I've only seen a limited number of teams, but they looked pretty good. They're at home this time, and they're in 4. Well, they're still in 4 competitions as well. We did the story last week, didn't we? They're 6 miles away from Manchester City, and he wants to chase the quad. Paul Marshall, the ex-Alfreton and Halifax midfielder, Manchester Premier Cup, League Cup promotion, and FA Vase. And you have how it is, boys. You always have this awkward conversation with the managers, right? Well, you're up there in the league, and you got this distraction of the Vase, and it only takes 1 game to knock you out of the Vase. What's the priority? And usually managers, whether they say it in the interview or just afterwards, they'll say, "Well, the league's the priority, isn't it? We love a day at Wembley, but getting up is the priority." And Paul Marshall just quite openly said, "Well, we want to win everything. We built this squad to have a go on every front. Why wouldn't we want to win everything?" Almost. So, you watch now. Commentators, they'll go out in the next round, won't they? But
Nelson will win on Saturday. Now I've said that, but
they look strong, and they've had runs in it before, so they've got a bit of history, and they've also got, I think, a supporter base there. Very colourful fan base, all sorts of flags. Not a boisterous support, vocal, but not necessarily any of the language or whatever. They took a lot of support to Rossington-Main that day, and you can imagine them, whether it's at home or away, having a good fan base and that making a difference in a tight tie as well. Watch out for West Didsbury and Chiltern. Famous last words.
Definitely. Well, we'll see what happens there. Obviously, Whitstable Town, the holders are still in it, which doesn't always happen these days with the kind of the way, back in a few years ago when you had the Whitley Bays dominating it, when, promotion from Set 5 wasn't mandatory. You could have teams sort of going back and winning it again. Whitstable obviously didn't get promoted last year. They'll be trying to do it again. They're away at Harpenden Town. They've kind of almost been going a little bit under the radar at the minute, haven't they? Whitstable, not sort of talking about them lows, but they're still there. Catch any games on Saturday maybe sort of sticking out to you, going to be sort of looking out for?
There's a couple of. I think one that Andy's going to Bilston Gresley. Bilston are step 6, aren't they? So I think that's that's an interesting one. Gresley, of course, former finalists, and Reading City against Lymore Gardens. Lymore Gardens is their first season in the Vase. They've had a great run. They're sitting pretty third in the Eastern Counties Division 1 South, up against a Reading City side who big club for that level, not really hit the heights as they probably should have done over the years. But they got a good friend of the paper, Dave Tarpey, is the player assistant there. Used to bang in all the goals, didn't he, for fun, for the likes of Maidenhead and Farnborough and Bracknell. Good guy, Dave Tarpey, still going strong. Looking forward to seeing how that one goes as well. See if Lymore Gardens can produce another shock.
Bilston Gresley is almost a bit of a throwback to my, when I first started watching Redditch in the Southern League, and Gresley were around. That was the time where they were top of Step 2, and I don't know if you remember, in the late 90s they were denied promotion to the conference as it was then, and Chatham Town, the runners-up, took their place and went on to Football League stardom. With ground grading issues hit Gresley, and they've been through various things. They've gone bust and come back, and I believe Bilston reformed as well at one point. They certainly sank down the levels. I don't know a fat lot about Gresley, but Bilston's manager Dave King, who drove Tividale forward just down the road from Bilston, from Step 6, and solidified them as a good Step 5 side. Good bloke, good, well-known. A lot of people in the area will be wishing Bilston very well, purely because it's Dave. And they've got a good setup there at Bilston as well. I don't know, there's just a little sense that maybe Bilston are getting moving. But it's interesting in the Midland Football League, I think there are still, testing my memory here, so I might get this wrong, but I think there are 4 MFL clubs still in it out of the 32, and 3 are from Division 1, Step 6. I know Heather St John's are still in there. Yeah, Heather St John's, Cornwall Athletic, Bilston Town, and you got Winsford from the Premier Division. So an interesting balance there. It's good to see those Step 6 teams in there, because it is a competition where a Step 6 team might just get to the final, particularly when you've got a strong Step 6 division like you have in the MFL 1.
Yeah, I think that's why we all like the Vase so much and enjoy it, because it does feel like that kind of open sort of competition where anyone can kind of take their chances on the day and progress and get through, and that's what it's all about, having that carrot at the end as well of a big day out at the at English football's big house at Wembley. We will look forward to covering all that in Sunday's paper. Obviously, lots of other bits and pieces going on as well. National League back to a normal week, and generally a normal league campaign. Weekend of league football having been a bit disrupted over since Christmas, and obviously winning the trophy and the FA Cup last week. So, chaps, thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We will catch you next time, and thanks everyone for tuning in, and make sure you pick up Sunday's paper. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
See ya.